Welcome to the Townsend Board of Selectmen's meeting of April 24th, 6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and with a roll call.
Sue Licio, present.
Wayne Miller present.
And Cindy King is present. Let's see, 1.1.1. We've got welcome Wayne Miller to the Board of Selectmen. Congratulations on the
you.
win yesterday.
Thank you.
Welcome to the board. And if you could all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. The meeting is being tape recorded. We're on Channel 9. I always forget what channel it is. I think it's Channel 9.
Channel 9.
Channel 9. And is there anyone else recording the meeting?
Yes, I will be.
Okay, Lisa, anybody else recording it under the Open Meeting Live? You just have to let me know that everybody can record, I just need to know who it is. Okay, so it's just Lisa. Chairman's additions and deletions, we're adding 2.5 to discuss the anniversary committee, and we just had the change to welcome the new board member. Appointments and hearings, 6:05, we have a joint meeting with the North Middlesex Committee and Moderator regarding appointment of Neshoba Valley Technical High School School Committee member. It's Mr. Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I guess I'd call the meeting of the committee to appoint Townsend's representative to the Neshoba Valley Regional High School Committee to order. And there being a quorum present consisting of the selectmen, Sue Robbins from the school committee, and I think no one else other than the moderator. Yep. I think we have a quorum. I believe we only have one applicant for the position. That's Karen Chapman. And Smart, if you can confirm that we did receive, or the selectmen did receive.
You did put a letter in your packets from Karen asking for reappointment.
Are there any other nominations?
Is this an appointment or reappointment?
It would be a reappointment.
A reappointment, because she's already on it,
Yeah.
right, okay. Any other nominations?
Not seeing any. Is there any further discussion?
Do you need a motion?
I would ask for a motion then.
I move that, what are we called? Our committee?
The committee to appoint Townsend's representatives to the Neshoba Valley Technical High School Committee.
That committee. What he said. I move that we reappoint Karen Chapman as a member for what time period?
I believe it's 3 years, yeah.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the ayes have it.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Are you in here?
I don't think
No.
she's here.
No, I didn't see it. All right, I guess motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.
Selectmen.
Thanks.
Just meeting on the record books.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Probably about 3 minutes before
Bye.
I stayed our welcome over a little bit too much. All right. I'll do the
You can
minutes up
stay,
in
you
a
know. You can stay, it's okay.
Well, yeah, I'll talk with Sue. I'll come back.
No shopping for you.
All right. So, 2.2, 6:15 is Keith Turgeon is here. Keith Turgeon representing the Townsend Ashby Youth Baseball and Softball regarding Craven Field. This is a continuation of our last meeting.
So you should have the information I sent out.
Yes. Where did we leave this?
So I updated the handout. And I removed the issue, the first issue that we resolved last time.
Okay.
So we're on to the second issue. This is the dogs at the ball fields.
Jim, is there any follow-up on this at all?
Well, it would require, obviously, if you wanted to have, it's been called an ordinance here, but a bylaw, that would be a town meeting, which wouldn't be an opportunity until the next special. In terms of posting, no dogs allowed, that's something that would be within the purview of the select board to do. It's town fields. It doesn't come under the care, custody, control of anybody specifically, which means it would default to you. So if it's your pleasure to have such a sign posted, that's something you could do by vote. And chains and locks, it'd be something that, again, you have the authority to do. I understand, and from speaking to Keith about this, they put their resources into maintaining the property, and they want to make certain that they're able to protect their investment. So even though it's town property, they are maintaining it and putting resources into it. So locks and chains to keep the asset protected would be something, again, that would be within your authority to do. The only caveat would be to make certain that the police department and the fire department particularly have access to keys, or that it's structured in such a way that there's a baller that has a knock-off, so if they needed to get onto the field, it could be knocked by going through. So the first is a town meeting, and the second two are within your purview.
I have a question about that one. Does issue 2 relate to issue 4? With the,
Yeah, it's, the last issue is
Is that if you
to see if
allow
we can get a long-term lease,
Okay.
similar to what the soccer.
because the soccer did both. I mean, they were having trouble with the people driving onto
Right.
the fields that night, because it's right behind my house, so I see it.
Exactly.
But they did lease to TESA the soccer fields for a period of time. I don't remember what the contract was, but I was on the TESA board at the time.
I'm not familiar with what the terms were.
But it was the same thing. Mr. Craven donated the fields to the town, and the town accepted them as recreational space, and then they gave TESA sole custody of the field, so lacrosse and football would be on them. So there is precedent for both of those things.
I'm going back a way, and it really talks to some of the documentation that you included. Was it you that put all that together in terms of past recreation commission votes and town votes and all that?
The past stuff?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with what you're.
That goes
Okay.
back to 88.
Maybe not.
So maybe it was Ms. Smart that did that, that looked up the history?
Profile,
Okay.
yes.
She sent me that a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So-
In looking through it, it jogs my memory because way back when, I think Mr. Rebholz was involved, Andrea Wood is mentioned. I didn't see my husband's name because it was apparently during a period that he wasn't on the recreation. But when you look through the history of it, this is just another thing to think about, because I don't think we have to make that decision tonight. Our Recreation Commission was always given responsibility for managing the fields, not necessarily the money for maintaining them, because the volunteers from whatever organization did that. But one of the things that I thought was really helpful that they did was manage who's using them when, so kind of helping with the scheduling, and their director is the one that helped with that. So certain, say the baseball, softball organization, the Little League, needed them certain nights. They would figure out between Spalding or Craven or the park in Timberley Park, which was given to the town for use there too. So it's just a thought, but I think it would be worth, rather than giving a lease to a particular organization, it seems like fields are a community resource, and I'm just thinking, maybe we should go back and look a little bit closer at what we used to do with recreation, and maybe our Recreation Commission would be interested in taking that on. I mean, I can't speak for them, they're their own elected board. But that might work as well. I mean, that doesn't prevent us as caretakers, if you will, of the property from doing the other things that you're asking. But before we jump into it, it might be something.
It's something Keith and I have talked about outside of the meeting, is how all the recreation department and all the youth sports organizations can work together, because we don't have a whole lot of resources. There's only 3 baseball fields, there's only 2 soccer fields, so, and I know with Hawthorne Brook, that's ever changing as well, so I think it's a good point to tie everything together, and have all the boards sit down together and kind of hash out what properties we have, what fields we have, what can be used for what, and offer a chance to work together that way.
I don't know, maybe Mr. Carther could help set something like that up, a joint discussion, and give them time to understand what we're talking about too, because I don't think anybody's here.
No. And I'd like to go back and look up what they did with TASA too, because that was...
TASA was different, and that's why I'm saying it was
Yeah.
a different organization asking for that. And I think, again, it's because they didn't have the benefit of the history of what we used to do. Oh, look, see, she's always got something for me. That's the lease agreement on the TASA.
Okay.
But again, this was different, and this was fairly recent. And what I'm suggesting is looking back at the responsibilities that we used to give to the Recreation Commission, where fields in town were concerned. It worked. That's all I'm saying, it worked. I don't know when it went away, because my kids eventually grew up and weren't using them anymore.
We don't have, at least with our league and our field, so we don't have issues with other organizations in town. So there's no issues with soccer or any of those other organizations. It's the independent, so people bringing their dogs on the field. And
I understand.
those are the types of issues that we're looking to try to get something. So we've had people come up to us and say, hey, we can go on your field whenever we want, do whatever we want. It's town land. Okay, well, we want to avoid that so we can keep the fields pristine for what they're meant for, what baseball fields are meant for. So we're putting the money in to support and keep the upkeep of those fields, which is extremely expensive, as you can imagine.
So I'm wondering if we can stick to the plan to have a meeting later to talk about
Ownership or management.
leasing,
Yeah.
renting,
Yeah.
utilization. But the 2 issues I think that we can more easily handle is handling any, can we do the no dogs allowed without the bylaw?
You can. You have the authority to do that.
Okay.
It's something that, in the past, when I've seen that being done in other communities, the board has held a public hearing on it, because people are very particular about their pets. And if it's been a practice for an abutter to be able to use the field or the ground surrounding the field for the past 15 years, and all of a sudden a sign goes up, you're going to create a lot of ill will, unnecessarily perhaps. So if it's something you want to consider doing, I'd recommend you schedule it for a discussion.
And how do
Okay.
you enforce it too? I mean, that's the other...
So we
Well,
could,
enforcement is, there's a sign up, don't do it. Or I'm gonna call my friend in the front row.
but if there's no law,
Exactly.
Only that
we're all still where we started from. Of course, so basically tabling that, and the other one,
Well, tabling it or scheduling something.
yeah, I'm trying to make it easy so we can do it all at once. Then, but the third one, continually expanding the property to private property. Is there a way that we can, number 3 is, how can we handle number 3?
Well, again, you have the authority to do that. And the only concern would be from a public safety perspective, that the public safety departments have access. So if there's something that's taking place in the field, or the backside of the field, any gate or chains that are there, we've got the ability to get through.
Is there
Are you talking about issue number 3 or number 3?
Yeah, that's what I was...
issue number 3?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was reading number 3.
Oh, okay, if we still, town ordinance, dogs, install chains and electric on the tail. Okay, so, well, number 3 we can do anyway. We just need to make it accessible for
Public safety.
Public safety.
Correct.
But we'd have the authority to do that without,
And if you're going to have a more global discussion with the rec commission, with the folks using the field now, perhaps all of those things, instead of doing
Okay.
it piecemeal, get everybody in the room and have a discussion about how that all would come together.
and maybe even all the issues possibly put off until another meeting with all the,
Again, it's
does that make sense?
within your purview, and I think if you're going to follow the lead that you've already suggested, which is getting all of the parties around the table in a discussion, then it probably doesn't make sense to break one or two small
Okay.
pieces off.
So have a meeting with rec, and then schedule, based on that meeting, have a public hearing on some of the issues that might involve the public.
The rec
Based on what-
recommendations.
Well, I'm not sure you want to combine all of them. I mean, one is rules about the field. The other one is who's the manager of the field in terms of day-to-day use.
Which would involve,
That would involve
Not-
rec.
right.
But in terms of, announcing a hearing, okay, we're
Oh,
having
no,
a
I don't
hearing.
mean after. I'm
Yeah.
saying in a different step. Have a meeting with rec to go over some of the issues that they might even be better, including with this organization, with rec, and to go over things that, rather than us doing it piecemeal, have a meeting with rec to come up with a plan, and then to have a public meeting over the issues. Does that make sense?
Just as an FYI, so when Taves was first, the baseball rink was created, that's when we actually split apart from rec, because there was problems trying to put the resources into the field because it was a town-controlled organization. So we've now got online direct things to control all the resources on the field. Everything is all controlled. It's actually done very well right now. So we'd be very cautious on going backwards from where we are at today in that regard.
I wouldn't ask them to oversee it, I'd ask them, what the
Oh,
recommendations
no,
on
right.
security is essentially what you're asking for at this point. How do they do it with the soccer fields? How do they do it with the tennis courts? And other
Right, so do we want to schedule that, do we want to plan, make that, rather than make a decision and make any,
Yeah, so it's uniform across the town.
just to have a meeting with rec to discuss
All fields.
the issues, rather than, and have that as the only thing we're going to vote on tonight? Does that make sense?
I don't know, I'm almost thinking maybe the recreation part of this is a little bit further out in the future, because really what I am most concerned about is the immediacy here. I mean, if I were putting, if it were my dollars that I were putting into the field for turf and for fertilizing and liming and all of that, and all of the work that they did over the last couple of weekends to do the trimming of trees and all, I mean, they're looking to protect the money that they've already invested, and to tell you the truth, I don't think allowing dogs to be coming in and doing their business is the best way to maintain a field that I want my kids to be playing on, or my grandkids to be playing on. So I think if we just let rec know what we're thinking and they need to think about what they do in a broader sense. And is there a need for looking at that? But that's a longer-term goal. I think short-term, I'd rather just have the hearing, talk to people about why we don't want dogs on there, and say, this is what we're planning on doing. If you want to come and talk about it, you can.
It's a long-term discussion about how across town it all plays, but a shorter, more immediate about
Let's get
security and
something
courtesy.
done here, exactly.
I agree with that,
Okay?
too.
So do you have a motion?
I move that we direct the town administrator to set a hearing to discuss with abutters, or to discuss the use of Craven Baseball Field, the prohibition against dogs being permitted there, and appropriate security measures for the field, for access to the field.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
And when could we hear from that.
Well, if you have a sense of what your schedule is going to be moving forward, we have town meeting obviously next week. If you want to go the week after, or if you're going to look every 2 weeks thereafter, once we get dates, we can
Okay.
start plugging stuff in.
How long do you need to post for a hearing?
I don't think there's a particular form for this type of a hearing. It's really more the courtesy of making sure that everybody's given ample time. But again, I think stretching it a little longer is better than having somebody feel that they were precluded from being able to be here because they got short notice.
And so we should send out abutter notices?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are particular rules to that, like sending them certified and things like that?
Not for this.
It's not a planning board issue, but...
Yeah, it's not, I mean, there's really no structure around it. It's just what you want to do.
Okay.
And you want to be as inclusive as possible.
Why don't you put a notice from the field that you're gonna have a hearing, because those people using it. This is something we're looking at, people that are buying it.
That's gonna affect immediately.
Well, we'll figure out. You wanna go out 3 weeks? When is-
That sounds good.
Got
Yeah.
about 3 weeks, not the week after town meeting.
So 3 weeks out
3
from
weeks
tonight.
out? It'll give us time to make all the notices to, however, whatever means we're gonna use to get the notices out there.
Perfect.
All right,
So 15th, is that the 15th?
I don't know.
15th, yeah.
Do you just want a simple legal notice sent out saying we're gonna have a hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty basic.
Yeah, it's the 15th.
Exact date to be decided, I guess, based on our meetings.
And Keith, you can have a copy to post on the field as well.
And what about issue number 3, though? That's really kind of different.
Is that more legal? Anything else?
When we're talking about courtesy as well as security, I would think that would fall under the same umbrella.
Okay.
I would,
So we could talk about that.
I wouldn't want to have the public hearing to talk about dogs, and then in the meantime, start putting up our own no trespassing signs. I think that would kind of defeat the purpose of being friendly about it. So, I think that should go under the same
Going
umbrella.
on for a long time.
I was going to say, when you look through the packet, this isn't new.
Right, right. And I believe, looking at just some of the names of the neighbors, they're the same neighbors, I believe. I think, unless
I believe
people
only
move.
one is the same.
Huh?
I believe only one is the same.
Oh, really? Okay. All right. So do we have any, is that all, do we want to, is there anything else we want to discuss on this, or just put it up to the town meeting? I mean, the public hearing?
Madam Chair, just one overarching issue, and I don't know what the history is with the soccer fields, but I think between now and the hearing, we should be looking at the process that was used to provide a lease. I don't know, was there a town meeting vote that?
I don't think so.
That went with that, because in order to lease, there was? Okay,
Was it?
in order to lease?
Is it?
Okay, good. Good.
I remember there was a lot of different things that, over the years, that impacted that, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
So anything else on this item?
Thanks, Keith.
Anybody?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Is Karen Hill here? No. We have an appointment at 6:35 with Karen Hill, but it doesn't seem like she's here. Is she still planning on coming, as far as you know? Okay. And
Do you want to go look and see if she's in the office?
Madam Chair, if you'd like to skip ahead, and I can hit a couple things under my report.
I'm trying, yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's anything we can,
We could do
The other
appointments.
things are timed.
yeah.
Do the appointments.
Yeah, get those out of the way.
Let's appoint Robert Henderson as an on-call firefighter, EMT to the Townsend Fire EMS Associate. Wait a minute. The EMS Association is a nonprofit organization associated with the fire department, not an appointment to, I think we're appointing Robert Henderson to the Townsend Fire EMS Department, not the association.
Correct.
So contingent upon passing all that. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that the board appoint Robert Henderson as an on-call firefighter EMT to the Townsend Fire EMS Department contingent upon the passing of a pre-placement physical inquiry with a one-year probationary period.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Welcome, Mr. Henderson. Is he here? Okay. 3.2, appoint Drew Broussard as a per diem firefighter paramedic to the Townsend Fire EMS Department contingent upon the following.
Madam Chair, I move that the board appoint Drew Broussard as per diem firefighter paramedic to the Townsend Fire EMS Department contingent upon the passing of a pre-placement physical inquiry with a one-year probationary period.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. All right, welcome, Mr. Broussard. Oh, there she is. Okay, so those are done. Okay, welcome. Sorry. No, we got a little ahead of ourselves here. Things are going faster than we anticipated, so.
That's always good.
Yes, Karen Hill, Conservation Commission regarding miscellaneous updates.
Yes, well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Miller on winning and welcome to town government.
Thank you.
When I was going to appear last week, we were going to talk about Earth Day, but that's come and gone. And we were also going to be discussing, we have issues still with Old Meeting House Park and ATVers. So with the assistance of Chief Bailey, hopefully he'll be running some patrols regularly, at least on the roads, to see if they can maybe catch someone, see someone, I don't know. We had some signage up, but that disappeared. So we're gonna put up some more signs that say no ATVs allowed, because there are no ATVs allowed on Townsend's town properties, so.
Where was this?
Old Meeting House Park, it's down off of.
Is this the
Washington.
same place that we were having trouble a couple years ago? Okay.
It's consistent, it's
It's the same?
same problem.
Okay.
So that's pretty much it. That, I just want to remind people in town that ATVs are not allowed on conservation or town properties. And I don't think the state allows it either. So please don't ride your ATVs. We have been lenient in the past and we're not going to be now. We just feel that, time's up.
Is this, I have one question for, is this strictly patrolled by Townsend Police, or is this also through the environmental police? Are they part of it?
Enforcement is more through the environmental police.
Oh, okay,
But they're stretched thin.
right.
So we have to build a case and actually physically catch someone, document it, and provide the EPOs with the information that they can then do something with.
So our police can detain and get the information?
Get the
and-
information, pass it
You
along.
you can't ticket or anything, it would be the environmental that would do that? Okay. Okay.
Question?
Yes.
So we have these laws that say no ATVs. Can you explain to the public the background for that? Why no ATVs on conservation on that land?
Because the motorized vehicles, particularly the wheels, they're going through some wet areas, wetlands. They're, turfing up the soil, which creates erosion. And then that sediment also ends up in the wetlands. So it's all about good stewardship of the land.
And it hurts wildlife.
Yeah, well, hopefully they're not
Potentially.
running over anybody, but.
Well, no, I know, but I'm thinking, upsetting the ground and all that silt going into the water can hurt
Correct.
the
The wetland. and then, yeah.
wildlife too.
Yep, absolutely. And you could be running through some areas where certain species could be living that we would like to protect.
Is that a turtle area?
I don't believe that is,
Okay.
but pretty much everywhere in Townsend is, so.
Is it turtle season yet? I haven't seen any yet.
Yeah, I saw one
Is it-
today.
Yeah, it starts,
They're starting to cross the street?
Yeah, I saw one today.
yeah.
What's happening in that area is the ATVs, they're actually digging up the roots. The dirt is spinning off, and the roots of the trees and vegetation there are now exposed.
Right. So it's just mud at this point, and, you know, the mud washes away because it doesn't have that layer of plant material to keep it.
There's nowhere in Townsend where ATV riding except on private property?
Correct.
Okay,
Madam Chair.
yes.
And Karen, are there conservation restrictions on Meeting House Park?
Yes.
So anytime there's a conservation restriction, you're also going to find language buried within that document that prohibits motorized vehicles. So it's not just a local concern of the Conservation Commission or the town generally. Part of the deal when we took
State money.
state money
To purchase
for the
it.
purchases and the preservation, we signed saying that we will enforce. Who holds the CR? Does the Conservation Commission hold it?
Yes.
So we're obligated to the state through that document as well.
That's why the EPOs get involved.
I see, okay. I was wondering how the state came in with it.
Yeah.
That makes sense now. All right. Okay, anything else?
We're working on another river cleanup, but we haven't heard from the state, so
Oh, you're trying to
we have to
schedule
get a
something?
permit. We have to get a permit from the
Okay.
state, and they just,
Do we have, I mean, last time it was, we've had a change in people, I think. I can't remember everybody's
Yeah,
name.
Nick
oh yeah,
was-
Nick, yeah.
He's downstream a little bit now in Groton. But he was one that really bird dogged that permit
Because he had
process
some
last
kind of certification or license or something?
No, actually, we had the permit before Nick came along.
Oh.
So we were just acting on a permit that we already had. And we tried to get a renewal or an extension of that permit, and we haven't heard back. And we're gonna try to go a little further down the river, but Fish and Wildlife just hasn't been responding.
And there, who has to issue the permit?
Correct.
Will there be, are we going to be impacted, that all this process, is this going to be impacted by what is potentially the town meeting vote next week?
Potentially.
How, in what way would that impact?
Well, I'm not 100% sure. We met with the Wild and Scenic, with National River Watershed Association. They came to our meeting back in December, and we asked that question, how will this affect our permitting process? Because National Parks is actually the one that oversees the river at that point, and they haven't figured out the process yet.
So maybe we should wait and hold that conversation until later tonight,
Yes.
because they're coming in.
Right, and I'll be
Oh,
here for
oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah,
Right.
so.
And, but one simple, just a quickie on that one. Are we going to be, will that, when we pass it, I'm assuming it's going to pass
Yeah.
at town meeting. Will that be effective immediately or July 1st?
Oh, that I have no idea. What I think
They're
happened.
coming tonight.
Okay, I just thought maybe.
Okay, well, I think what
It's a simple
they,
question.
They're here.
They're
Oh, they're
here,
here.
okay.
They're here, but
Okay.
they're not, their
Well,
appointment isn't.
We'll get to
now.
your, well, if you can, all right, let's table this
okay.
until later on the agenda, how's that? All right, which is actually next.
6:50.
Okay,
50,
but they're here.
They're here.
Okay. So Karen, is there anything else for you specifically?
I think not.
You can, okay.
But
And are
thank you for your
gonna-
time. And again, no ATVs in town.
If,
All right.
If any citizens observe ATVs where they're not supposed to be, we just call the police department.
Please,
Okay, drop a dime, guys.
Yeah.
It's your environment.
please.
I saw one coming down Ash Street the other day.
Last time we had it done in the square.
They go by my house once in a while.
This is the first time I've seen it, ever.
I used to see people, it's been a while, but I used to see people take riding lawnmowers to go to the brick store.
That's unique to your
It's
neighborhood.
West Townsend, what do you want me to tell you?
To each his own.
Golf carts down in Florida.
Anyway, okay, so is everyone here from the National River Watershed? Is everyone here, are we waiting on anyone, or, okay? So, so can we go, move up your 6:50 appointment to now? Okay, come on up front, and we can continue this conversation and get an update on the wild and scenic.
Sit there.
Go ahead,
Hi, Karen.
talk about the wild and scenic river.
Great, well, thank you for putting us on the agenda tonight. And I also want to thank you for endorsing the project last week. We heard you took a vote, so we certainly appreciate that. I'm glad to be here when these questions have come up about the river cleanup. Wild and scenic designation would have zero impact on a river cleanup. It does not affect any of the local laws or the state laws. And in fact, and I was just talking with Ray about this earlier today or yesterday, in the stewardship plan that the study committee has put together, that if there were designation, the voluntary stewardship council would be implementing. There is in that stewardship plan any number of places where the desirability of working on river cleanups just like this is included as a potential strategic action that any given town might want to think about, or towns together might want to think about. And indeed, the funds that could come from the federal government to support the projects that the Stewardship Council undertakes could potentially, if the council voted on it, go for this kind of project. There are many projects that could benefit the environment, but this is listed as one that the people who are now working on the study committee see as incredibly beneficial and something that would be well worth doing if the council wanted to in the future. And the other question that came up was, when is this in effect? It is not in effect until Congress passes designation and the president signs it. So what happens after all the towns have had their town meetings to see if they accept the stewardship plan and its recommendation for designation is that then the Congress people submit legislation, and it goes through hearings, and there's an unknown time period of whether it could possibly get all the way through Congress this year, or it might take several years. Pass it, and then it would go to
Okay, so it won't, the
president.
designation won't
No.
be, this vote won't impact anything we're
No.
doing for the political future.
Well, and then it does not impact any of
Right,
the
okay.
land use or local controls.
Okay.
Good to know.
Yes, that's, and so let's assume we pass it. And it will, you are going to submit it to
The study committee.
Nikki Songus?
Yes, while she is still in office, yes, she would
Okay.
take the lead
Okay.
on submitting some legislation to Congress. She would be joined by the folks up in New Hampshire, and then,
Okay.
if it's not passed this year, we would see who would want to pick up the mantle in a future year.
Okay, I know Nikki Songus has been very active in.
Very active, very
helping.
active. And of course, there are already wild and scenic river designations in her district. They've been there for 20 years and
Oh, good.
been great examples of success, have a lot of ideas to share with us on what are good projects and how it goes and how to support the towns and so on. And so she's been a big champion of it.
I have a question. So I got word there's a public hearing on Thursday?
There is. It's at, let's see, it's at 6:30. It's over at the library. We think of it as a forum.
So people can go ask questions before town meeting?
Absolutely. We have held a public forum in each of the 11 towns that are participating, as well as other meetings. You came to a few months ago. And we're going to show a short film. We're going to have people from the committee there answering questions. Any and all questions, 6:30.
Okay.
We have a website, I imagine you folks have already looked at it, but it's Wild and Scenic Rivers, plural, naturalrivers.org. And up there we have digitally, as one does these days, a copy of the stewardship plan. It has a list of all the endorsements so far from the town boards. You're joined by your other 11 towns, the other 10 towns, and lots of information about the process. And so people can take a look at that. And we also have the stewardship plan over at the town clerk's office, not too far from this room, and also at the public library for folks to look at.
Is that something we could put up on the website?
I'm sure we can link it, yeah.
You could, and I'm pleased to say that we got the file small enough so you're going to be able to
Well, I'm
That'd
just
be great.
thinking a link.
Even a
Yes,
link
that's
to
great. A
yours.
link would be great, sure.
Yeah.
We'd be delighted to, sure. That'd
What
be
needs to
terrific.
happen to make that?
I just need to go on, find the link, copy it. So
Yeah.
it's simple.
Make sure you do that. One of the reasons that I wanted to come before you, even though you've taken your vote, is obviously to see if you have more questions. And the other thing is to just give you a little information about what the study committee is thinking about a presentation at the town meeting. A number of years ago, back in 2015, you appointed Bill Wilkinson as a representative of Townsend, and he is not sure that he can be at town meeting. And so what we're going to do is invite Joan Watkowitz and Al Futterman to come up and speak to the issue. Now, Joan, I imagine you know her, but if you don't, she's been a resident for 35 years. So she's a newcomer, we understand that, at 35 years. But she's been here, and she's worked on the library campaign and the Squanicook River Rail Trail. She's done water monitoring, which of course is good for the community, and all sorts of things. She's on the board of the Nashua River Watershed Association now. But much more relevantly, she came in close to the committee to help us with editing the plan, so she knows it page by page. And she has been going to a couple of the study committee meetings and other meetings, and so she's up to speed on it, and has alerted us to, things that we would be interested in to make sure included for Townsend and so on. And we thought she would be a good spokesperson, along with Al Futterman, who's come before this committee as our land programs director. And we wanted to let you know that so you weren't surprised by what's happening. We're also going to have Jamie Fosberg in the room. He's not speaking, but anyone who's in town could call on him. And he's with the National Park Service. He's actually the head of the whole Northeast Rivers program. He's going to be at the CONSCOM tomorrow night to see if there are questions that can be answered. And he really has so much experience. He's been in the program for over 20 years. That there is nothing too esoteric for him to have a good example of how it works out or what to do about it. So he'll be a resource for the town as well during the town meeting. And just to let you know, we understand that the presentations at town meeting are short. It's so short, we understand that. We're choosing to take just a few minutes of that time to show a short video. I mean, you may have gone on the web to see the link to it. It's under 4 minutes. So we would show that video and just talk for a couple of minutes. We've talked to people on the committee. People on the committee have talked to Mr. Barrett about that.
Yeah, okay, I was going to say John Barrett would be the
Carolyn
one
and,
to
yeah.
approve
work
that.
through.
We can't.
Yeah, yeah. Most of the towns are choosing to, if towns allow presentations, are choosing to show it as a quick introduction. So, I don't know, Joan, did you have something to ask or add today?
No, but I already worked it out with the IT gentleman
Okay,
down here.
cool.
He's willing to set it up for me, so
Great.
I'll come ahead of town meeting and make sure it's working properly.
Hey, be ready for those glitches that happen.
Can I ask a question? Is that allowed?
Sure.
It's your
Kind of a
meeting.
continuation of your appointment.
So, the removal of woody debris is something that you think you can help with, but how is that going to help getting through natural heritage?
I don't think I'm not aware of how the wild and scenic designation would help with that.
That's the big issue.
Yeah, Ray was just alerting us to
Yes, I got his
the
email.
difficulty of
on the way
that. So
here.
if we can help. Martha's trying to work on it today a little bit for you. So,
Is that the stuff that when we were cleaning up, we had to leave on the side that you want to remove?
it's a permit issue.
It's the permit issue,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's part of the,
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
that during the cleanup with the permit, we had to,
We have to
could-
leave certain amount of woody debris
Only
as
takes-
habitat. And
Right.
it's the habitat that we're going through, we need a permit for.
I see. And you, okay.
So we have to appease the people who are in control of that habitat.
Oh, I see.
That's what the permit's about,
The other,
yeah.
the habitat people, not necessarily the tree people. Is that
We're all
correct?
tree people.
We're all tree people. All right, never
Yeah.
mind. Well, we got turtle people, we,
I think
Well,
that Karen and the
the-
town did such a good
I know.
job with the stretch that was undertaken with the.
that was, I
the
I
first.
did that, and Chief
and
Bailey
did the
was out there.
documentation on that so well that I think it's I don't think there's a hang-up. It's just the state is very understaffed, and so once they
Just takes
turn
time
to
to
it.
get these things.
Because
Yeah.
Fish and Wildlife ultimately oversees it, but there's a division of them, Natural Heritage, which kind of covers endangered species. So they're the ones that are kind of holding us up.
They want to make sure that we're not going to overly disturb
Yeah.
some of the things. And everyone has to have their
Well, we have to, yeah, we can't take
kingdom.
You have to
everything.
prove that you're not taking any habitat away from endangered species.
It's just a
Oh, I see.
suggestion, but sometimes, especially, well, I mean, those departments are under the governor's office. You might have some luck giving Representative Harrington a call, too.
Yeah, we're trying lots of avenues. Lots of avenues. So, because time's ticking for getting a permit for the summer.
Right, they
Right.
do only do it in a certain window, so it is.
They're busy stocking my fish right now, so don't bother them too
Oh, I
much.
saw them stocking fish today
Your
down on
tank?
Warren Road.
Where? No, my tank's
last time,
fine,
remember,
by the
you
way.
lost
By
your
the
fish in
way,
the fish tank.
my fish tank is doing very well.
Oh,
thank
good.
you. But no, where were they stocking?
Fish and Wildlife, they were stocking down on Warren Road, or
Nice.
off of Warren Road, or whatever.
Nice.
Yep. Official beginning of fishing season.
All right, do we have any more questions for?
No, I just encourage everybody to go to the open meeting on Thursday if they can.
Yeah, that sounds like,
That's
I think I
great,
have a meeting that conflicts with that, but
Get in
hopefully.
touch with us if you have any questions.
Yeah,
We're eager to hear them. We know that people do have
I had some and I've
questions
got
so-
them, I think I've got them all
Okay,
resolved
great.
now, so I'm pretty
And
comfortable.
when the letter gets signed, we'll put a link to it up on our website, and we'll go with that, so that'll be good.
Great,
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time tonight.
Thank you for coming.
And we'll see you tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Busy day, huh?
It is. Thank you.
Okay. We are way ahead of ourselves, so
Karen's here.
Karen Clement here.
Good night.
Oh, do you want to go now? Is it too early, or are we, are you
waiting?
Are we waiting?
I'm just gonna expect one more person, but
Okay.
that's
We
okay.
can wait. We can skip to something else and,
Yeah, I don't know.
okay, let's do that. So the next thing is our work session, votes may be taken. 4.1 is the town administrator updates and reports.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Item 4.1.1, consideration to approve an agreement between the Town of Townsend and Montezut Regional Planning Commission for the purpose of completing certain tasks related to the town being a green community. You should have a document in your packets that contemplates this work. What we'd be doing is contracting with MRPC using funds available to us from the administrative funds that come through the Green Communities Grant. So it's not budgetary funding, it's grant funding. And it would be for a sum not to exceed $10,000. It's delineated on scope of services, which I believe is attachment A to the draft contract. There's no procurement requirement because it's an agreement between government agencies. They are currently providing this service for a number of other communities within the MRPC region. And it may in fact be that when the dust settles that the person who was instrumental in writing the grants for us here in Townsend, securing the funds, who is now an employee at MRPC, would be the one that would be coming on and doing the consulting work to make certain that the projects get moved forward. And that's Karen Chapman.
Friendly face, huh?
Yeah. So if it please the board, if you have any additional questions, see if I can answer them. If not, a motion to approve the agreement as presented.
Any
I
questions?
have no question.
Any questions?
No, it's fine.
Motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the agreement with the Town of Townsend and MRPC for the purpose of completing certain tasks related to the town being a green community.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of other bullet points that have come up since the agenda was posted. There was a meeting just yesterday between the town of Pepperell, the town of Ashby, and our fire chief, Mark Boynton, regarding the possibility of regional telecommunications dispatching between the three communities, mirroring the district that we have for 50 years been successful with North Middlesex. It's very preliminary. Obviously, we've gone through all of the pains we've gone through with the Devens group over the last year and a half, and one of the concerns probably 6 months ago when this was being kicked around a little bit by some folks in town here was that the Commonwealth wasn't interested at that time in working backward off of the fact that they had decommissioned our PSAP, our dispatch location, put money on the table for us to go to Devens, and they weren't interested in trying to unring that bell. My understanding from talking to a member of the select board in Ashby who was leading the charge, for Ashby at least, Selectman McCallum, this morning, at Sue's suggestion, I think 7:30 this morning, I was able to get him before his day started.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine, it's fine. He said that they've had preliminary discussions with Frank Posniak from E911, from the state, and they've been able to frame it that all of the money that has been spent to date for us to go to Devens would be the same money that would need to be spent if we were to do something between the three communities. For instance, the conversion from PAMET to IMC, the actual software framework that we'd be utilizing, whether we were going to Devens as we are today, we have IMC that's just been installed, or if we were going to be going between the three communities, we would need IMC. So that money's not wasted. It would be spent either way. Additionally, there's phone work that would be necessary for us that's not yet been done, that we'd be able to work through to Mr. Posniak's satisfaction as well. So it's very preliminary. I know we've been down the road with Ashby in the past. It predates my involvement by a number of years, but we got part of the way down the road, and then the wheels fell off of that discussion, and it never went anywhere. But it seems that there's a renewed sense of interest in doing this, with Ashby particularly taking the lead. I think that's a good sign. So what I'd encourage is that if a member of the board wants to engage as a liaison, we don't currently have a public safety liaison. So I don't know at what point in time historically the board has done liaison assignments after an election, but we don't currently have one. It would generally be that member's obligation is the wrong word, but position to interface on that type of an issue. So I know that Chief Bailey and Deputy Chief Sartell were made aware as of last week when Chief Boynton brought this to my attention, that this was something that was starting to percolate again. So we will be having a meeting, I think a very soft meeting with just some staff within the next week, and once something firms up a little bit more concretely than that, I'll reach out to whichever member of all the board, but particularly whichever member you choose to be the representative. But there's some hope between Pepperell, Ashby, and folks on the ground in Townsend so far that this would suit us far better than where we are now. So.
Right, my only concern on the whole thing is money.
Sure.
I'd hate to spend more money and more money and more money and still have concerns. And as long as our public safety people, both police and fire EMS, are interested. And if Ashby's had a change of heart from a few years ago,
Right.
I know that they had more community-based concerns of losing that community of, well, which is some of the issues that we had
Sure.
as well, and concerns about going over. But I know some of the needs of being able to meet the legal requirements and the staffing requirements and the training and expectations to have more than one dispatcher on is probably more than Ashby can really
Absolutely.
keep up with anyway. So this is probably a good time where they can feel comfortable that their dispatchers aren't going to be discarded.
They're in the same situation that Chief Boynton and former Chief Eaton found us in a year and a half ago, where we had antiquated equipment, we had some failing systems, and it was either going to be a significant local investment in infrastructure or looking to regionalize. The move on the state level is to try to encourage, force is too strong, but force regionalization of these services. So Ashby's in that box right now. They're looking at what it's going to take if they wanted to try to stay alone, and they don't think that it's economically feasible for them. The model that they've scratched out so far, and it's just back of the envelope according to Selectman McCallum, is that for on or about the same assessment that we're currently paying to be at Neshoba at Devens, we'd be able to be part and parcel of the three-town district. I don't know what that looks like. I don't think anyone has gotten that far down the road yet, whether it would be something that would be hosted in Townsend, hosted in Pepperell. Technically, we don't have our location, our lines, our delegation anymore through E911, so it would likely be one of the other two, given that Pepperell is already larger and more technologically updated. Between those two, it would likely lean towards Pepperell. But again, I don't think anything's been decided in that regard yet. They've just looked at the raw numbers between everybody, what the current costs are and what it would likely be.
Didn't Pepperell just vote not to do regionalization, though?
They voted not to regionalize with Drake.
Tewksbury,
Tewksbury, oh, it was Tewksbury and Drake.
way up there.
Yeah, I mean, Ashby looked at going to Ashburnham, so they looked at going west. Pepperell looked at going north. We looked at going south, instead of looking at each other, which is mirroring the school district, so.
I think over the last 20 years or so, since when I was back when I was on the ambulance, there's always been talk about one aspect or another to, I mean, Pepperell, Ashby, and Townsend have been close on a number of issues, and especially emergency services, mutual aid is just a given, that we have, even if they're not in writing, I mean, I know they're in writing, but we support each other on all those issues, and I think there's been chatter from every different aspect of the departments between the three towns to regionalize in some way, and there's been things that have just not been able to come to fruition, but this sounds like it's probably, the timing sounds better.
Yeah, I
So
think
hopefully they are able to do that.
From a very parochial perspective, we are situated where we are. Now, the bugs are not fully worked out, obviously. There's been a lot going on at Devon's that has been beyond local control of the chiefs. But we're in a comfortable position compared to the other two. Pepperell realizes they can't go it alone any longer, which is why they've been looking. Okay. Ashby's recognizing now, probably a little later than they probably should have, that they can't go it alone. So they have to do something. We don't necessarily have to change course. If it makes sense to do so, then obviously we're in a position to
Yeah,
consider.
if we can financially, if it's not, when we first started talking about pulling out, the rumor about pulling out of Neshoba, my only concern is, I hate to have this huge bill because we're going to change course. If it's within reason and we're able to work out the bugs that are apparently there with that, then I'm all in.
Mr. McCallum called me, I guess it was early this morning, and then I called Mr. Kreidler and said, you need to get in touch with him because you talk the same language and it's really in your court at this point with the, police and fire chief. So come back to us with what it sounds like. The one thing that he did say that made an awful lot of sense to me was we're already a school district and all three communities are concerned with the children in all three community schools. It would make sense from that perspective as well. So logistically, it makes sense that we have a unified dispatch for all three communities where they ever have to do anything having to do with the district that we already belong to, and it's worked out well. We're used to working with Townsend and, with Pepperell and Ashby, so it makes sense. I think timing is everything, so maybe this time it'll be fruitful.
So that's as much as we know. Okay. And once we know dates, make certain the board knows. And do you have a sense, notwithstanding what ultimately might be your assignments as liaisons, who would be interested in participating in that discussion?
Obviously, we talked about it.
No, I know.
Yeah, I know that my schedule's pretty tight. It sounds like a big project, and I'm probably a bit overstretched as it is for me to take on a
And
project.
it doesn't need to be an every
Yeah.
meeting, in the weeds. I just mean somebody to make certain that there's some communication, so
Yeah.
we're not marching down the road.
I think
as a
it's
staff.
important to have a representative from the board as our designee, if you will, on the project, if nothing else, so.
So you've already started talking to the...
So I may, is it appropriate to make a motion even though this was part of your updates?
You're already 12 hours into this project, so.
I was was going to make a motion that Mr. Miller be our designee for this project, if Mr. Miller is willing to do that.
Be happy to be.
Aha. So I'm making a motion that Mr. Miller be our designee.
I guess I'll second it.
Throw the new guy into the
All
bus.
those in
Yeah,
favor?
why not?
All those in
Aye.
favor? Aye, okay.
Quick, before he changes.
Yes,
his mind.
right. Before he sees the other list of additional duties.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A relatively small but important item that's also come up in the last couple of days. There's been some work being done between the town accountant and Betty Mae Tenney, who oversees the band concerts in Memorial Day. And specifically, there's been an issue with how the band members are paid. And I've learned enough in the short time I've been here when Betty Mae asks for something to make certain that she's put in the proper direction to get what she's asking for. So she and Lori got together, worked it out, and the net change is that she needs to have her budget increased in order to be able to pay the union rate, which some of the performers were getting and not all were getting. And that's a $2,000 change in budget. What I've proposed, and I've sent an email out to that effect for you, for your consideration in advance of tonight's meeting, is we have a little more clarity on our general insurance, our property liability insurance line. I had budgeted a little bit more conservatively there than was necessary, so we have the $2,000 that we'd be able to, without changing the bottom line of the budget, if it meet the board's approval, to change the insurance, general insurance line, reducing it by $2,000 and increasing the Memorial Day band concert line by $2,000. I've taken the liberty of preparing the documents already in anticipation of what I would hope would be your support in that.
So
Because
moved.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
I
And
do
I'll
have
be-
one question. Will that increase cover, do we owe people something from the past?
My understanding is we do not.
Okay.
This is a prospective issue.
Okay, thank you.
And I know that members of the Finance Committee were also copied on that email, and they'll be taking it up on Thursday at their meeting.
Okay.
And lastly, just wanted to get goals and objectives out on the table.
It's on my list, too.
You had it on your list? Okay. So if I inherited some goals that predated my involvement, that were kind of loosely defined. And I don't know what your pleasure is as a board as to how you want to do that moving forward. If you each individually want to put your thoughts together, if you want to have it as an open session where it gets kicked around, or one-on-ones, so whatever your pleasure on doing it. But whereas the contract between us calls for my evaluation to be completed by December, and consideration going forward for my employment is predicated on how I do in my evaluation. To the extent the goals and objectives will be part of the evaluation, we should do that sooner than later. Any thoughts?
My thought is that, yes, we need to get that moving, but we also, as a board, need to do that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense to give you goals and objectives outside of what our goals and objectives are.
Oh, sure.
But
Okay.
I do think that needs to be sooner than later as well.
Yeah,
Out of fairness.
yeah, I would hope in the next couple of meetings, yeah.
Procedurally, do you see it being done in an open meeting, in a work session, outside of a regular meeting, but still posted, or how do you see that happening?
I was picturing a work session dedicated to that purpose,
Sure.
but that was just my opinion. I don't know how the board feels.
All right, so we scheduled,
Are you done with you're done with the school thing that you were doing, huh?
oh, yeah, yes,
They
they
did
appointed
that,
a
good.
new superintendent, so I've got, but, well, we don't have a meeting scheduled for, do we have a meeting scheduled for 2 weeks from now?
That's what I was.
3 weeks
We
from
have a-
now.
That's one other
3
thing
weeks
that I
3 weeks
had.
from now, on the 15th.
So we could have a work session 2 weeks from now.
So,
Yeah.
let me just make sure, in terms of meetings, we have the meeting next week prior to the town meeting, right?
But
The half hour or so
And
before.
that's just a little organizational thing.
Yeah.
And then, didn't we used to have our Board of Selectmen's meetings on a regular basis on the second and fourth Tuesdays?
First and third, or second and fourth? I don't,
Alternating, depending.
yeah.
So I was thinking it was second and
Well, since I've been here,
fourth.
it's never seemed to work. There's always something come up. So I've never seen that actually happen.
Well, so maybe we can try for more consistency. And that would say, so this is where it differs, because in May, the second and fourth is the 8th and the 22nd. So in between might be the,
Well, the 15th, we just scheduled it.
well, we didn't schedule, we talked about it, but we didn't schedule necessarily.
I thought we did.
We talked
Oh, we had
about
some,
that.
we asked for the open meeting with
For the-
rec.
Yeah.
The rec, yeah, for the 15th.
Oh, we did definitely say the 15th,
That's
because
what I
I was
thought.
thinking it was still kind of
No,
soft,
I
that's
thought
all.
we
I thought
scheduled.
he was gonna reach out to the
I
rec
thought we,
commission.
yes,
see if
we've
that's
got to notify the abutters and everything.
But we're still here and we can change it. That's what I'm saying. It's not, he didn't go off and do it already.
I did,
No, you didn't.
emailed.
Everybody's been emailed already, so. We're high tech here.
It doesn't really matter to me.
calendar?
I was just trying to know what my schedule looked like.
Calendar.
I kinda need to know that too.
Whatever your pleasure.
Doesn't matter to me. What works for you guys?
I'd start on the 15th because the week of the 7th is gonna be tough for me. On short notice.
So if we do first and third?
5:15,
We try to
Okay.
consistently say first and third
First and-
Tuesdays?
Let's do that.
Third.
So the week of the
So
7th, so
be
the
it.
8th would be out for you, Wayne, to do a work session?
Yes.
Okay.
5:15 and
5:1 and 5:15. We can then do the 29th, if that works, even though it's
Because we have
not
an
the
extra
first or
month.
third.
We have an extra month.
Yeah, because we have an extra Tuesday this month. We could do the work session on the 29th.
let's say that we're doing it then.
Let's do that.
So 29th is the work session.
No one's taking an extra day or two for Memorial Day weekend, are they?
Nope, I'm not
Okay.
going anywhere.
All right.
Excellent. That's all I have, Madam Chair, thank you.
All right.
So we have everybody here for Karen.
Is your group here? Okay. Our 7:15 appointment, Karen Clement, regarding discussion of forming an anniversary committee for Townsend.
Hi there. We had a 275th anniversary committee, and when I was here at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, Selectman Lizio suggested that we should have a committee established, which would actually look better when we are going to try to get funding on a yearly basis to help fund the anniversary celebration in 2032. So I took you up on your suggestion and contacted actually about 16 people who are willing at this time to be on a 300th anniversary committee for the town. Will we all still be around in 2013? Excuse me, 2032.
Yeah.
Heaven knows, but
You could set up a trust.
we would love to start out with that. We would obviously not hold functions immediately, but about 5 years out, we would start running fundraisers. This past anniversary celebration cost about $150,000. So I anticipate that it'll be a lot more than that many years away. A lot of people don't realize that you have to pay for bands, you have to pay for the Shriners, you have to pay for everybody that pretty much walks in that parade. There's very few people that just come to join us. All the troops, acts are paid to be in the parade. We did do a lot of fundraising with a very small committee from the last anniversary celebration, so it would be really nice to potentially be backed by the town, whereas the last celebration, not a cent from the town was spent. So that's why we're setting up the committee early and are hoping for your approval to set up a committee. And can the other two people speak that are with me if they would like to?
May I? I wasn't quite born for the 200th in the 1932 year, but I was here for the 250th in 1982, and it was marvelous. And then I was also here, of course, for the 275th. And I hope to be here for the 300th anniversary in 2032. And I think it is a very good idea, and I think and hope the townspeople would agree that some funding in this way that we're trying to do this with 14 years away, some money each year put away for the purpose of the parade would be awesome. Thank you. Karen, you said you have a number of people. Do you have a list of names of
I
volunteers?
submitted them to Carolyn.
Okay.
And if you want to form a committee and post it and then form.
Yeah.
Do you want, I can rattle them off
Yeah.
to you if you'd like.
Well,
to
I
know
mean,
them.
I'm glad you've got that many interested, but if we're going to form a committee, we really need to post to get volunteer forms from everybody who is
The
interested.
volunteers on Facebook don't count? No.
No.
Well, that's
No,
fine. You
we're
have to
gonna
post
do it
for
the
your
old-fashioned
10 days,
way.
whatever, that's fine.
You
Well,
could,
maybe
in
we'll double this.
anticipation of us getting that posted, they can start filling out volunteer forms
Sure.
and submitting them.
Yep.
And then we'll post so that if more people
Sure.
wanted to volunteer.
That sounds great.
So I would like to make a motion that we form a, what's it?
300 anniversary.
300-year anniversary committee for Townsend, and that we post for volunteers.
How many,
and
do we
how
want to
many do we
establish, how
wanna
many volunteers do you
limit
want
this
on your
to
committee?
for your actual committee?
How many want to be involved? I'll take.
Well,
Well, we could end up with 30.
Well,
I
it's
mean,
great,
we don't want
because
to,
then
but
you'd
a
have
committee.
different people
But
doing
if-
different things.
if
so-
if you have decisions that need to be made, you're probably better off saying 5 to 7 people on a core committee to make the decisions and to go, because otherwise, you're not going to get anything done. It's going to be just volunteers running around. That's my suggestion. I mean, I would say a 5-member committee that then can solicit other volunteers to work with them.
Yeah, the committee, appointing the committee, that means you're going to meet with, if we're appointing a committee, you're going to have to meet with a quorum. So you don't want to get every volunteer that wants to help with the anniversary on your committee. You want the leadership that's going to be the organizers and the ones recruiting volunteers and organizing the details and figuring out the money, what we need, and those kind of things. So your core committee isn't going to be every volunteer.
And you need to operate just like any other appointed board, you know, have a chair and take minutes and make sure you have a quorum, and those all become official votes and all of that, okay? So,
5 or 7, what did they? 5 or 7, how many? 5 or 7?
well,
You want to start with 5?
Okay,
Yeah.
5,
And then,
okay.
then if at some point we can change, we can vote again to
Okay.
restructure that committee for,
That's
if you
fine.
needed, and appoint more members, if you found that you needed more on your committee. But sometimes you can't forget about, you're going to have meetings that you're going to post, and you have to have a quorum. So
Right.
you don't
You're
want
better
too
off
many
with the
people
5, yes.
that are not going to be necessarily as committed as a core group of the 5, is the only
Well,
reason.
we'll definitely have the 5 then, but obviously it'll be an open committee where everybody will be able to speak and say what their ideas are. So.
and that
the
would be
5 is-
entirely up to whoever
Yeah,
your
so
chair
That's
is.
fine. Okay, yeah. Hey, I agree with anything.
And you have to post the meeting and the whole thing, okay?
So,
So a 5-member committee for the 300th anniversary committee.
do I have a second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. All right. Start raising money.
Well, the seed money is coming hopefully from
Oh, yeah,
the
we gotta
town
post,
meeting,
well, we're gonna
right?
post that and get that, okay, all right. Okay,
4.2,
so, down, where am I?
4.2.
4.2, Board of Selectmen announcements, updates, and reports. Ms. Lucio, do you have anything?
I wanted to talk about meetings. I want to talk about some future agendas, but you have 4.2.1.
Well, let's start with Wayne's brand new. I don't have any updates to report. So board reorganization, how do we want to do
I
this?
did have one update.
Oh, you have an update? Oh, wow.
Just another reminder.
Date.
You have an update?
Just a reminder.
Just a date.
You had an
No
update
up.
already.
The North
What has
Middlesex High
happened since last
North
night?
Middlesex High School's putting on their play this weekend, or musical. I'm not sure which one they're calling it, but it's Hunchback of Notre Dame. There's shows Thursday, Friday, and 2 on Saturday. So I encourage everybody who hasn't been to the new school to get there because the auditorium is absolutely beautiful.
Kids
And
are
the kids
so
have worked
great.
so freaking hard on this. They deserve the support of the towns. So
They're good. They're really good.
pretty much.
Okay, board reorganization, usually, we've lost our vice chair, who has ended his career as a selectman, I believe. And we have, normally, the newest member of the Board of Selectmen becomes the clerk. And I don't know how you guys want to vote, but normally the senior selectman is the chair during their third year, which I was appointed to the chairmanship early, because Gordy resigned and wanted to pass the baton earlier. But I'll pass on to you guys to make that decision.
I'd like to break with that precedent
Of course you
and
do.
go back to simply open it up to the board as to who they want for chair, et cetera.
Make a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that Sir Luzio be chairman.
I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, you're it. And
Gee, thanks.
and I want to thank Sue for taking over so that I can spend my last year observing. That would be the pleasure to be able to do that. So I also want to, since I'm still the chair until we're done, do we want to make Wayne the clerk? I make a motion that Wayne be the clerk.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that would make me vice chair by default.
So, by default. So I move that Cindy be the vice chair.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Let's see, we have approval of meeting minutes. Do we have any to approve? Is it-
I don't think so.
Is that
No,
just?
this sets down, but you haven't approved everyone yet.
What?
So what,
You didn't get them in advance to proofread.
Oh, okay, I didn't think so. It's just on the agenda, so okay.
so I don't have updates, but I would like to ask the town administrator to put some agenda items on the next meeting, if we could. G, one of them is to discuss Board of Selectmen goals and objectives, but that one is already scheduled for the 15th, right? I'm sorry, 29th.
Yeah.
Mr. Kreidler, you talked a while ago about policy on public comments. I know the school has one. The North Middlesex allows public comments during, I think, the end of their meetings for 10 or 15 minutes. I'd like to be able to do something like that, but I definitely want a policy and some structure around it. I have a couple of samples that I found, but I'd ask if you could bring some possible or recommended
Sure.
policies.
Madam Chair, through you to Sue, is it your interest in having public announcement or public comment? And if public comment, is it public comment on agenda items or
Okay.
carte blanche?
It's funny that you say that, because one of the ones I found that's almost perfect, I will share with you. And that's kind of what I was thinking, but I'd like to share it with the board too. I don't have it with me. I believe it was the town of Hingham. It seemed to be pretty comprehensive. I think the intent is, if people just want to be able to generally, make an announcement, like Mr. Miller just did, about, there's something coming up, then of course they could do that. But also, if there is something, and I think it depends on whether or not we have the comments at the beginning or the end of the meeting, okay? But if they want to make a comment on something that's coming up on the agenda, that's fine too. What I'm hoping for is we would not allow, of course, any comments or criticisms against any people. There are rules for every kind of conversation that you have, and there are things that are off limits. And that, I think, it was a pretty good one. There was another one from Brookline that I saw too. And those are just two of the ones that I found. There might have been a third.
And Madam Chair, through you again, when this issue came up, shortly after I got here, I had put a memo together that I know got great circulation in the community that talked about some of the First Amendment considerations. So what I would encourage you each to think about, if you choose, is, and I'll forward the memo this evening before I go home again, I'll dust it off, but you can't limit types of speech if you're going to allow speech.
I can limit, and I can put a rule around any kind of obscenity, vulgarity.
Sure.
There are certain behaviors and decorums that I would want written in that policy. But also, the public should not expect a discussion with the board.
That was going to be my next question. Is
It is not for discussion purposes, okay? We're not going to have a conversation. People are going to bring things to the board's attention that they think are important. This is my thoughts, and I want you guys to think about this as well, okay? But my thoughts are, thank you for your input. We'll take that into consideration, and if it's something that belongs to conservation, refer it to conservation. Some people don't know who's in charge of what, or refer it to you to come back and report to us what happened.
Would they be able to ask questions?
I don't see it as being conversational.
Would somebody be able to ask a question?
If they ask a question, it would be about a particular thing for clarification or something like that. Okay. There are towns that also do it by asking that if you have an opportunity to think about it ahead of time, if you would put it in writing. That works in two ways. One is it allows you to put your thoughts together because time is limited. There's usually a time limit on it as well. So if you allow, say, 10 minutes of public communications and there's 5 people, you're going to need to limit it. So it might be a good idea to have them in writing too. These are just thoughts based on what I've seen, because I've been thinking about it for a long time. And I think this is a good forum for people to be able to say things, but I want to make sure that it's a positive experience and not a negative one.
And I guess the reason I'm asking specific questions is I don't want to go research policies that are a non-starter. So do other members of the board have a sense for whether it would be things that are limited to the agenda items? And the reason I keep coming back to that is open meeting law considerations.
I think it should be part of that, and if it's a new question or a new comment,
Then you
refer
put
it
it
to
on
you
an
as a
agenda.
future agenda.
That's right.
And you can do that with the questions that are submitted in writing as well.
Exactly. So if somebody brings something to our attention that we haven't thought about, like there's this thing going on in my neighborhood and I'm really concerned about it, well, we don't have it on the agenda for today. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. We will see to it that it goes on an agenda within the next month.
All right, and I believe you have, as part of your existing policies, people that are going to come and speak on an agenda item are encouraged, if not required, to present any backup documentation they have in advance, so it can be on your, not only on the agenda, but in your packet. So if there's a policy on public comment, and if somebody brings something up that is not on the current agenda about an issue they'd like to have agended, would that then dovetail, or should we drag that language in, that any information they have be presented in advance so you have it in your packets to make it fruitful?
What I don't want to do is for us to make those decisions right now, because I've given it a lot of thought. Would it please the board for me to work with Jim on doing some kind of a draft?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll come back at the next meeting with that.
And you're still going to send that?
I'm going to send my
Email.
original memo. I'll do that
I
tonight.
remember that. I'd like to see it again. That'd
And
be
while
very
we're
interesting.
talking about public comment, I just want folks to know, when I get an email or a letter that's addressed not just to me, but to my board, and this really pertains more to an email, and I want you to know I'm not always going to answer that email, because if I answer that email, you addressed me as a member of the board, and I'm not sitting at the board. That subject would need to come before the whole board for me to be able to answer it. Otherwise, I would just refer you to Mr. Kreidler, because I'm in violation of the open meeting law if I do that. Okay? So we have to be very careful of those things, and I know some people have the expectation, well, I'm sending you an email, answer me. But I would do it even if you called me on the phone. You know, if you hear what I'm saying, it's just me saying it. I am not a board member when I'm not sitting here. Okay? Lisa, we can't call on you because we haven't figured out how to do this yet.
All right. So, any other updates? All right.
Well, I have some more.
Oh,
Okay. I would like town council to set up a meeting with town council to update the board and the new member on our ongoing litigations.
So would you like
Gordy,
that as a part of the work session, perhaps, so it's not going to tie up on a regular...
however you think that would work the best.
Does it take like an hour before?
Takes as long as you want it to take, but if you already have a full agenda on a regular meeting, it really kind of hamstrings your ability to take it as long as you want.
We never did finish the Board of Selectmen policy regarding Board of Selectmen use of town council. If it please the board, Jim and I could finish that one.
if I could just back up to the new members' discussion with town council. Our work session isn't scheduled till
29.
29. I think it would be important for Wayne to at least have a phone call.
Well, usually what we've done is have the board member meet with town council prior to the town meeting, or prior to us meeting next week.
Oh, that's right. I forgot
Because he's
town
here
council's-
anyway.
Oh, okay, I
Right.
just want to make sure. I know when I came on, it was just coincidental that town council was here the night of my very first meeting, and I was able to meet with him prior to the
You
meeting.
were off cycle, though, so, yeah.
Yeah, that was November of
Yeah.
2015.
That's right.
But I just want to make sure that Wayne has that opportunity. I think it's really very helpful to understand what's really going on.
I think we have a policy on that anyway. I think there's a policy that says that you get an hour with town council.
I just want to make sure he gets it sooner than later, but if we have town meeting next week.
I don't think he got his coupon yet.
Oh, all right, we'll give him the coupon, all right?
We're getting together at 10 tomorrow, and that is actually one
And
of the
then you
things
can
I
never
emailed.
talk to him
Good.
again, so
Okay,
ask all your
good.
questions now.
Because I think it was, can't remember now, but one of us ended up, just before the 6 o'clock meeting, we met for an hour with,
You did last year, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm gonna schedule it.
and Mr. Kreidler, if we could get an update on the RFP that we talked about a while ago for town council. I didn't see anything else come through. Just where are we at on it is all I'm looking for. Update on the personnel policy that we approved a change to for the percentage. On 220, I hadn't seen anything else back from the other boards. That needs to be approved by the
Which percentage?
percentage of, for health insurance. We voted on that back in February, but I haven't seen that, the result of that being circulated amongst the other elected boards. That has to be approved by a majority of boards.
Yeah, there's, I'll talk to you offline on that, but I'll have a report at the next meeting for you. as well.
Beautiful. And that's it.
Okay. Any more
Thank
updates? Okay. All right, so we skipped over approval of meeting minutes because we don't have any. 4.4, review and sign payroll and bills payable warrants. And there's 2 envelopes, so we have both.
Okay, I move that we review and sign the payable and bills payable warrants out of session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Move that we adjourn at 7:34.
Second, sorry.
All those in favor?
That's an important one.
Yes, please second that one.
All those in favor, aye, yeah.
Yes, all right, we are adjourned.